All right, guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the buying process. So, this is something that we explain a lot to clients, and I think right now we're working with a buyer client who's working to purchase a investment property, and obviously there's whether you buy it on the market, off the market, the process is pretty much the same. And so this individual they're actually looking to buy a duplex and live in one side. They've got a pretty, kick-ass deal. They're actually doing, just kind of throw the situation out. So they're actually doing a 0% down. They've got a VA loan, and that is like the gold. It's just,
Golden ticket.
man, that's the golden ticket. It makes me want to go back and go to the military and serve the country to get me a VA loan. So, but no, I mean, all that aside, this individual's very smart at what they're doing, but they've never bought before. And so I think us explaining the buying process, Misty and I going through that is going to be important. So, the number one step when you start and you're going to buy, let me kind of back up. Most people, when you purchase an investment property, and we hear this from even people who are older than us. When you purchase an investment property, they're scared, right, Misty? Like they're kind of like they're nervous. They're like, oh man.
Very much so.
Yeah, even if you're buying your own property, sometimes maybe you're used to renting all those years, and then now you've got to go buy an investment property, or you're going to go buy another property, and you buy your first property, and you just really don't know where to start. And so, there's a couple steps you've got to take. But I do want to share this because I think Misty would get a good laugh with this if she can tell the story. The first time I was involved, what happened, Misty? The first time I was involved in the buying process. Go ahead. Share it. It was scary as hell for me.
Yeah, so we go to buy the house. We're at the title company, and he won't come in.
I won't even go in, man. I was in my 20s. I was like, I was nervous, man, because all I knew was to rent.
The good thing was it was just going in my name because I was the one that
But
was qualifying, so he didn't have to sign or anything, but he was scared. He
I
was
was
trying to
nervous, man.
leave.
Well, no, but I was supposed to pay half. Like
Yeah.
we were putting 3,000 down, and I had my portion, and I was like, I didn't want to put my portion down. It was
So
nerve
I had to
wracking,
run to
man.
the bank and get more of my money to close.
To close. I was scared as hell, man. I mean, think about this. So that would never be me now. Now I'm like, how fast can we get to the title company? But the process was scary because you're like, you walk in and you see these big packets and all these documents, and we're married.
You're signing your life away.
Yeah, we're married, and you're like, man, I'm gonna sign his fucking life away, like and like she said, it was going in her name. It wasn't in my name, but I mean, obviously, Texas is a community state. Like, I have some some part in this. But I was scared, man. I was like, it was so nerve wracking because this house that we were purchasing was for 100,000, and I'd never, I mean, I barely had got my first car, some years ago. Like it just wasn't that idea of $100,000 note that I got split with my wife was like scary to me. Now I look now and I'm like, I hear the numbers.
Can
I'm
we
like,
get more of those?
yeah, I think it was under $1,000 a month at that point, right?
Yeah.
That was the payment. I mean, now I'm like, I look and I'm like 1,000. You don't got $1,000? The hell you doing? But that's, again, it's all relative, right? We've
Yeah.
got a friend of ours who, they hear 100,000, like, you don't have 100, they got a couple 100,000, they're like, you don't have that, just contact a lawyer, everyone's relative. So I tell that story because I just remember my own first experience of buying or being a part of the situation, and man, it really took a while to kind of wrap my head around that idea that I actually was like, I don't want to go in. I actually remember where that title company is too.
You're like the dog at the vet.
Yeah.
I had to drag you in, fighting.
Dude, she had to, man. I was like, hell no, I'm not going in. I don't want to sign nothing. I don't want to pay anything. But ultimately it all worked out. But it was fear. It was me being scared of spending, and had built the business to a good degree. I was doing six figures in the martial arts academy, and I was young and but I was holding tight to a lot of cash, and I just didn't really like. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, fuck, man, we're gonna sign. I'm gonna end up paying also. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And this was house number 2. because this was us that we were buying together, and so
It was your first
it was
house.
my first, so I'd never experienced it. But so don't worry, guys. We're gonna run you through this process so you don't have to do what I did, and your wife doesn't have to drag you on a leash to the vet. It's Finn, our dog Finn. Yeah, that's Finn. You gotta like put a leash on him and drag him, and he just kind of like falls over. That's about how I was. So the first step, I mean, what's the first thing we gotta do, Misty? I mean, so you're gonna buy a house. I mean, we've got to do what? You got to get pre-approved,
Yep.
right?
Gotta
So
know what you can buy.
you gotta know what you can buy, and whether that's you're gonna go what kind of loan you're gonna go with. So you got to talk to a lender. You've got to figure out, and anybody in here that if you're listening to this and you're an agent, you need to get your client pre-approved.
Mhm.
If you're the one buying it, you need to get pre-approved. So there's different types of loans. You can go with a VA loan, and then of course, and I'm not going to dig deep into loans because you need to talk to a lender about it. And
Yeah.
of course, obviously, people contact us. We direct them towards several different lenders that we work with. But you can go with a VA loan, which sometimes 0% down. You can go with an FHA loan, which is what 3.5% down,
Mhm.
and then and this is if you're buying and living in it, but or in this case, in the VA loan, this individual's gonna buy, and then they're gonna live in one side, and they're
Mhm.
gonna lease out the rest. So they still an investment property, but because they're living in it, owner occupant, it's like
It qualifies.
yeah, it qualifies. So
Or
and then
conventional.
or conventional, which is, could be 10 to 20% down. I say could be 10 to 20 because we've seen some conventionals where you go 10% down on some individuals and some,
Or
typically I would
5.
five, so that all depends on the bank. It all depends on the lender. You've got to talk to those lenders, but you've got to know that number. Like, how much am I approved for? The worst thing you can do is start looking and not know.
Yeah, because you'll find the property of your dreams and you won't be able to get
Yeah, exactly.
it because
It
you haven't done the pre-work to get there.
it could be the best investment property, and you're like, I'm excited. You look at your wife and you're like, I want to go to this title company. You don't have to drag me in. And then you're gonna realize, man, I can't buy this damn thing. So yeah, you've got to get pre-approved. So you got those are your main, those are your three, and then of course, obviously cash, as well. If you've got the cash, you can do that. So and cash isn't hard. The process is the same. You know, aside from signing your life away, it's less documents to sign, but the process itself, you've got to make that offer, right? You're going to make the offer, so you find the property, you decide, okay, so, or actually you get pre-approved, then you go look for the property.
Mhm.
Then once you find the property, so now we've got to talk about putting in, the offer. So you put the offer in, and, that's where I think people get stuck because the pre-approval process, it doesn't burn, doesn't hurt. Finding the property is exciting as hell, and then the offer part is like where people go, okay,
This is real.
yeah, yeah, this got real fast, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it gets scary,
Yeah.
So that's where the scary part starts if you've never done it before. So
Mhm.
I remember just when we, first making offers and stuff. I mean, it's not like that now, but I do remember there was a point in my life where making an offer was like, it was like the scariest thing because you're like, what if they say yes? Then what do I do? So, you make
I'm
the offer.
committed.
Yeah, I'm committed. But there's a couple things in there you've got to understand. So, depending upon what you're buying, anything that's single family 1 to 4, they say 1 to 4 is like a single family home, a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. And we're talking for the state of Texas. I'm not talking all the way through, but in the state of Texas, the buyer is protected more than the seller. It's the way it's set up. So, in the state of Texas, you can actually, there are certain things that go on that allow the buyer to get out of the contract if they need to.
Mhm.
I'm not saying go and abuse those things, but there are things you can do. So one of the first things you do is when you make an offer is you've got to give when you put your offer in, you say, okay, I'm just gonna just make numbers up here. Let's say we do $100,000. We're gonna buy this house for 100,000. You know that you're gonna do say conventional. Let's just say that's pretty typical. Yeah, you do conventional, so you're putting 20% down. So then you're putting $20,000 down. Now, when you tell, hey, this is what we want to purchase it for, we're going to put this much down, 20,000 down. You now have the ability to do what's called an option period. So the option period is where you can actually say, hey, for $100, I'll give you the seller, or I'll give you $100, and you give me 7 days. Now, it doesn't have to be 7 days. It could be 10, it could be 3, it could be 1, it could be none, and no option period. I don't recommend that on your first time. But 7 days is pretty typical, especially if you've never done it before. So, $100.
Yeah, especially if it's an investment property, because you have to schedule that with the tenants if it's not vacant.
Right. Yeah. If it's not vacant. Yeah, we'll get to that too here because it changes when things start getting when they're vacant. So just say single family home, right? And you're going to buy it so you can rent it to somebody. You can lease it out, but you can pay $100 or you could pay $50. There's no real magic number there.
Yeah, I'd
But
say anywhere between 50 and 200 is standard.
yeah. Yeah, there's no it's standard, but it's not, you don't even have to you could pay whatever you want. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we use 100 just as an easy number. So $100 to get the house, to get an option period, to where in that 7 day option period that you picked, because it doesn't have to be seven, it could be eight, could be nine, could be four. Let's just say 7 day option period. You can actually back out of the contract and have no penalties. The $100 goes to the seller
Hmm.
just as a payment, and you literally got to
For
be
time off the
for
market.
time off the market, and you paid $100 to get the property under contract. Under contract means that they've agreed to your offer. That's what the word under contract means. So if you hear someone say it's under contract, that means they've agreed to the offer. And then from there, you know, obviously you pay your $100 and you're going to pay earnest money, which is typically 1%
Of the sales price.
of the sales price. So with that 1% of the sales price,
But it's negotiable as well, so it
mhm,
doesn't always have to be 1%.
you can just do $1,000. It
Yeah.
really just depends, So
Now, the higher your earnest money is, the more serious the seller's going to take you.
right,
And so if you're having multiple offers or things like that, having a higher earnest amount could benefit you being picked over all the other offers.
exactly. But if you're the only one, $1,000. Right. But so what you'll do is you make that, let's just say, $1,000, $100,000, 1%, $1,000. Okay. So we paid $100, we're paying $100 for options for 7 day option. We're paying $1,000 for earnest money. Right. And earnest money is basically saying and it's basically saying, hey, I am putting up $1,000 to purchase this property. And if I back out after my option period, you get $1,000. If I back out before my option period is over,
Your
I,
$100 is securing that earnest money so you can get it back.
right, absolutely. Because if I back out before that, then I back out before the option period, I get my $1,000 back. And I think that's most important. The reason I'm really kind of stressing on that, or really emphasizing that, is because if you're new, it's scary to go. You mean they can take my 1,000? No, they don't have to take your 1,000. You just have 7 days or whatever your option period is to determine whether or not you are wanting to move forward. So,
One of the points, though, I'd like to make there is they will cash that check.
oh, yeah.
So this money, you're not giving it directly to the seller. You're
Mhm.
giving it to the title company or whoever's going to be holding that for you. And more than likely, it's going to be a title company. So you give the 1,100 to the title company. They are going to cash it. So it needs to be funds that are available, and they're going to leave your account, and they're going to be held at the title company until we know whether we're moving forward, canceling, or
Mhm.
renegotiating, or what have you. So the title company will just hold it as a third party.
Yeah. No hot checks.
Yes.
And you can't just throw down cash. That's not it.
And all of
You
that needs to
actually
be paid within 3 days of signing that contract, of everybody, executing the contract.
right. Now explain that. So someone knows their timeline. So how does that? So explain the timeline of once the
So when you're making an offer, you as the buyer will sign it, and y'all will send it over to the agent for the seller. And so they're going to be looking at all their offers. Once they accept an offer, they are going to sign it as well. And then they're going to send it back to the buyer or buyer's agent and let them know, hey, we've accepted this offer. It's executed. So whatever day they sign it, everything falls into place. It goes active. So that's day 0. And you have 3 days to get it to the title company. So you have to pay your option and your earnest money to the title company before the end of that 3rd day.
So, for example, if Sunday was day 0,
So you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So before close of day Wednesday.
you have to have them. And if you don't have it there,
Then technically you don't have a valid contract.
right,
So you don't have an option period. You don't have. Yep.
you have nothing.
Yep.
Yeah, you have nothing. You didn't perform is
Hmm.
the term. So you didn't perform. So if you want to make sure it's under contract, you need to get all of that there, because otherwise, if it doesn't, you don't meet your timeline, you are not under contract, and they can just sell it to someone else. So
Yep.
and then that's the thing. So once you're under contract, once the seller agrees and you agree, and you have dropped your money off at the title company, and that once the money is dropped off at the title company, then from there you are now under contract, which means that no one else can come in and grab it. It's 100% tied up. It's yours. No one else is going to come in and say, "Oh, by the way, you know, I'll do $100 less," and then they're like, "Oh, you know what? You know, we're going to go ahead and get rid of you, and we're going to go with this person." They can't
Yeah.
do it. They're stuck.
Yeah. You're under contract.
You're under contract. So if you hear that terminology, you're working with an agent or just in the business, so you're getting in the business, and you hear the words under contract. We're under contract. What they're saying is we can't do anything. We're waiting this out to see what happens if it closes. Because sometimes when things go under contract, they don't always close. It could fall out, which
Correct.
means someone doesn't, maybe they don't perform. They don't. It could be anything. There's so many reasons it could go out of contract. So, but the main thing. Go ahead.
And if you don't plan on going through with the purchase, or don't just assume that by not paying your option or earnest money, it's just going to fall out, because the seller could, take you to court and
They could for
make you go through with the purchase. So make sure, you either get it to there in time, or you send in your cancellation prior to that.
Right. Yeah, there's a cancellation form you'd actually
Hmm.
send in and say, "Hey,
To terminate the
we're
contract.
terminating the contract." So, just make sure, and that just comes down to communication. So the reason we're really emphasizing this is because anyone that's listening, it's your first time. I remember the first times I heard how the process was, it was scary, because I'm like, those days for me, it was $1,000 was like, "Oh my God, it's $1,000." Like, I don't know what to like. I don't just have $1,000. But when you understand the process, it's really not that scary, because there are protections like the option period
Hmm.
and things like making sure you're just following the basic, guidelines of dropping your earnest and option money off at the title company. And then, you can protect yourself.
Yeah,
And
follow the process and pay attention to deadlines.
right.
And then have all your ducks in a row. So if you want to get the property inspected during that option period,
Hmm.
or, you need to run it over with your lender of what your monthly payments would be, and, whatever you need to do, make sure you get it done before the end of that option period. So already know what company you're going to use for inspection, and get on the phone
Right.
and call and schedule that appointment.
That call should be on day 0.
Yes.
All of those calls should be on day 0.
Yep.
Everything should be
If you
right.
want to have an additional roofer or something come out and look at it, or air condition person or something,
Mhm.
foundation company, whatever, have it all lined up.
Well, to throw that out there too, that you your option period starts on day 0. So if you do an
Hmm.
option period, say 7 days, it's just like the other. Like, it doesn't start after you dropped your money off. It
Yeah, it's
starts,
not in addition.
yeah, immediately. So if, for instance, let's say on a Sunday, you've signed the contract and you said, "Hey, okay," and you send it to the seller, and the seller says, "We accept," and they sign, your your clock immediately starts ticking right there. So now you have to make
Yeah.
all your phone
Yep.
calls, your whoever you want, a plumber, an AC, or inspection company, whoever, whatever, you need to go look at this property. You've got to get it all done right there, because that's day 0.
And you want to get it done with enough time that you can renegotiate if you need to,
Hmm.
and before the option period ends. And it ends at 5 p.m. on whatever day. So that 7th day, it would end at 5 p.m. local to wherever the property is. So you want, if you have to go back and forth with the seller negotiating, because items need to be fixed, or you want to do cash in lieu of repairs and have them pay, you know, either knock down the sales price or do seller concessions or something like that
You
to
have to explain
offset
those
it.
terminologies.
If you want to decrease the sales price because things need to be fixed, or instead they're going to offer seller concessions, which means they basically give a credit to the buyer in order to not do those repairs and make it be part of the buyer's responsibility. Then they can do that. But all that has to be negotiated and it's got to be executed. So there's extra documents. The negotiation process has to happen. Then the documents have to be drawn up and signed by both parties prior to the expiration of that option period.
Now, remember when you hear, and we're bringing this down to a much more detailed and to a level of if someone's never really done this before. When you hear the word executed, that means that you've both agreed and signed
Mhm.
is what executed means. So if you hear the word when the contract has been executed, that means that it's been signed. So again, we're just bringing it down to a lower level so that anyone who hears this and they've never been through the process, they kind of get a better idea. So also too, so you've dropped your money off. Your 3 days has started ticking. Your 7 day option period has started ticking. And then once you get to the seventh day, right? So we're done option period. So now we're on eighth day. So you're like, I'm gonna move. You had all your inspections, everything was looked at, and you're like, we're good. We're gonna move forward. So now day 8 shows up, and your money. There's a terminology called your money went hard. Your money goes hard. So what that means is your earnest money, the money you put up, that 1%, that $1,000, that money goes hard, which means that now if you back out, the seller gets your earnest money. They
In
get
most cases.
in most, yeah. So
Full disclosure.
yeah, this is like full disclosure. In most cases, they get your, they get your, they get your earnest money. So they'll get, and then your earnest money though. Keep in mind that when you pay that $1,000 is actually going towards
You're closing.
your closing. So if you are purchasing $100,000, a house, $100,000 house, you're putting up 1%, you're putting $1,000 up. It goes towards your
And your
closing.
option money does too.
Yeah, option money does too. So as long as you don't back out, now you have $1,100. The option money and the earnest money is going to go towards
You've
closing.
just prepaid.
Right, exactly. You've prepaid. So, so just know that that goes towards it. So day 8 hits, and you say, "I don't want to do it." Then you lose out on whole $1,100.
$1,100.
So, and again, it's simplicity. We're not. I don't want so detailed. We're like, well, could this and could that, but
Yeah.
simplicity, you lose out on it. So just make sure you make those decisions beforehand. Typically, it takes about 30 days to close. So from day 0 and then 30 days later. That's typically what it is. Now, if you're an experienced investor, and you're buying in certain other ways, there are ways things can close a lot faster. But
Mhm.
we're just talking normal transaction. You've never been through it. You're new to it. Just count for 30 days, basically. So day 8 hits, and then now there's other things that need to happen, such as, maybe there needs to be a survey. So maybe someone says, well, I don't have my original survey. So, you're going to either you or the seller, depends on what you agreed upon in your offer, is going to pay for a survey to be done. That's important. You want to make sure you have a survey. Don't go in there without one. You
Yeah,
know,
if you're closing with a loan, more than likely they're going to require it. So
right. So, and surveys are what, $500, something like that. They're not,
for a typical
yeah,
property, 4 to 6.
yeah, not super expensive. So, so just know that's an item that, like she said, if you're going alone, you're going to need that. So, make sure.
But it gets rolled into the cost, so it's not something that you have to come out of pocket
Mhm.
during this whole process. It's just tacked on to the closing.
Right. So then now, so on the back end, so for you as the buyer, it's just a lot of waiting at this point, depending upon, if you're using an agent, it's just more waiting than anything else. Now you're kind of like, okay, I've got to let the lender do what the lender needs to do.
Yeah, just check
Um,
your title policy when it comes in. Make sure everything's good
you want to
for,
explain the title policy?
yeah, just making sure that nobody else is going to have claim to that property once you purchase it. So they're going to go back through all the past ownership of the property and make sure there's no claims to it. and make sure everything matches with the survey. That you're buying what you think you're buying, and not only half of what you thought you were buying.
Yeah.
So just and making sure that the use of the property you're buying is what you expected it to be.
Yeah,
So
you don't wanna go buy something without a title policy. So title policy is insurance, basically. It's an insurance title policy is an insurance policy, and insurance, that's really what title companies are. They're insurance companies, and they're saying, "Hey, if you buy this from, you know, Jim Bob, that his ex-wife Mary Lou isn't gonna show up and be like, 'Hey, that's my property, and I own part of it,' and we didn't even know she existed, and then she shows up and you already
you should
purchased
have
it.
paid me.
You should have paid me," or whatever other craziness can show up. I don't even wanna get into those details. But we have experienced that in the sense that purchasing a property, title reveals that, well, this individual that we purchased it from has an ex-wife who, they've got to work out their situation before it's sold, and
We
the
need
ex-wife.
copies of the divorce decree and who was,
Right.
awarded this and blah 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 blah.
Yeah. So you've got to make sure. So your title company is, this is why it's good to close. I think whether on or even on or off market, you want to close the title because you just want to
Yeah.
make sure those things are done. Otherwise, yeah, you did waste a lot of money trying to buy something that someone else is like, well, I got claim to that. I own part of that. So your title company is an insurance policy saying if something was to arise and someone was to take claim, they will help take care of that. So,
Yep.
that's pretty much what it's insurance to that. So so they help you through the process of closing. So your title company is going to go and they're going to do a search and figure out if there's anybody that otherwise has claim or ownership or could you hear the words claim,
Could come out of the
there you
woodworks.
go. They could come out of the woodworks and claim that they own it. There it is. So, that way they're just giving you that insurance of that, right? So peace of mind. So you're kind of in a waiting period. After day 8, you're in a waiting period. You'll get updates from, if you're working with an agent, you should get updates from the agent, should get updates from the, title company as they're moving along and they're doing their search, and, they'll say everything's clean, we're good, so and then your lender will do things like they might order an appraisal.
Hmm.
So the appraisal is where you want to explain that on a loan, kind of how that works.
Yeah. So they send out somebody to review the property and make sure, they look at past sales and everything and make sure that the property is valued at what you're purchasing it for, or at least for what the loan amount will be.
Mm.
Because the bank does not want to loan money to somebody that's higher than the asset that secures it. So if the house
I was gonna say, give me some easy speak. I know what you said.
So if the house is valued at 100,000 and they're giving you a loan for 120,000, then that doesn't make sense to them because the house is securing that loan. So if you were to go delinquent on that loan, they can take the house back. But if you're delinquent on 120,000 and the value of that home is only 100, then they're short. So they want to make sure that the value of that home coincides with the loan amount that they're giving the buyer.
Right. So they're protecting themselves because if they got to come back
Because
and
that's the house is the collateral.
right, the cloud, that's the item that says if you make a mistake, I get to turn around, take it from you, and sell it.
Mhm.
And so they got to make so they'll have, and there's a couple different appraisal types of appraisals, but just the short version is they're going to send someone out to go look at that property. And again, remember guys, and we're talking about 1 to 4. We're not talking about multifamily commercial. We're talking about 1 to 4. You're buying a single family home, you're buying a duplex or something like that. And so as an investment. So
And that's something else that will cost money as well. And it is also rolled into your lending costs. So they just take care of that at closing. It's not something that you pay out of pocket generally.
yeah. So as the buyer, you want it to come back when the appraisal comes back to come back. Sometimes you want it to come back a little bit, you basically want it to come back right. But if it comes in lower, they say, well, you guys offered too much. So now there's a couple options you have.
You can either renegotiate in order to close because that appraisal stays with the house. So in order for the seller to sell it at a higher cost than that appraisal, they either have to have a cash buyer who it doesn't matter, or somebody that can bring extra cash to closing to cover the difference.
Right. And in 2020, we saw that a lot. People
Yes.
had to bring extra cash to closing, but we're not in 2020 right now. So, and we may not see that for
So
a while.
they might be willing to negotiate and reduce the sales price so that it's selling at appraisal.
Right. And so, and that's why I say sometimes it's good that it can come in a little bit lower because then you might be able to get it at a lower price. See, the object, guys, anytime you're working, if you're on the buying end, anytime you're buying, working with an agent, working with, or just you're doing it, you want to buy it for as cheap as you possibly can get it.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an agent that's pushing for, more, that's a commission situation. They want more commission. Your agent should never do that if you're working with an agent. I actually try to go in and say, hey, how cheap can we get this thing? Realistically, how cheap can we get it? And that's really my job because if you guys do this right, when you're investing, you don't make your money when you sell, you make your money when you buy. You buy it at a cheap price so that now you have this large spread of equity. So when it closes, you walk in, they call it walking in with some money. You walk in, you're like, I've made some money. Now, you don't see it, you're in it, you're touching it, I'm here, but you don't actually get to, grab a hold of it. So you want to buy it sometimes coming in lower, the appraisal is actually really helpful for you. And it's not
For
as
the
good,
buyer.
yeah, for you, the buyer, and not as good for the seller. So now we've got to a point where, we're still like in a waiting period. So we're waiting around and
Don't go shopping while you wait.
yes, you want to explain that, Misty, why that's important.
Because the final step before closing is the lender's going to rerun your credit and make sure everything's good to go with you. So make sure that you haven't done anything such as lose your job
Right.
or go and buy a new car or go run up your credit by buying new furniture for that house
Yeah.
or new appliances or whatever. Wait until it's yours.
Yeah. We had a client of ours, a good friend of ours, but he's pretty solid. He actually bought a car while they were buying two houses. But he's got his shit together, so he was
Yeah.
able to do that. But most individuals, if you go and you buy new furniture, you're gonna fuck yourself. Don't do it. Leave it alone. Don't touch it. His though, he's got his stuff together. It's very important for him. So, but very rarely is that anybody, right? Is that
Yeah.
everybody? So yeah, no credit cards, no nothing. Just leave it alone. You got 30 days, and even after that, give it a little bit of time. Just don't touch it. And while you're in your search, even while you're in your search, you shouldn't do those things. So if you're searching for a property, you still don't want to go out and do all those
Correct.
things. Now, if you did something to help your credit, that's different, right? If you're like,
Yep.
well, I'm gonna go and pay something down, that's a different story. But to purchase something new, you know what I mean? Or to be like, I'm gonna go get the American Airlines Admiral Club card and do it. Just leave it alone. Don't touch it. You don't need it.
Yep.
Because that can mess it up.
You can window shop.
Yeah.
Make your list,
Yeah.
but don't go buy it.
Exactly. So now you're in a waiting period. Anything else we've missed, Misty? So you're in your waiting period. Title company's doing their thing. Survey's been done. Title company's doing their thing. Now you're not messing. You're not buying anything.
And depending on the title company, where they are in the process and your lender, you might be able to close early.
Right. And
But
then another thing too. So when you close, sometimes this is really nice. Things have changed a lot. So you can either close. Sometimes you can close at the title company, which means let's say let me back that up. Where I say you can close, you can sign all your documents to purchase at the title company, or sometimes they can actually send. A lot of times, if you want, some it's free and included. Others you got to pay for it, but you can actually have a notary, come in to you.
it's a mobile notary.
Right, a mobile notary come to you, and you can sign all of your documents, and then that way, now you can close on the property. But just because you sign your documents doesn't mean that you now officially own the property. You're not done. You still have to do so. You'll hear the terminology of closed and funded.
Mhm.
So you close and fund it. So close is the signing. Funding is where the money goes from your account, you know, to their account, basically. So
Yeah.
obviously you're sending that to the
And the
title company.
lender has given the money to
Right.
the seller.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the lender has released the funds. They've given the funds to the seller. Your money, your down payment money, if you had down payment money, has been, transferred as well. And so the money has ended up in the other person's pocket, basically, an easy way to put it. And you won't get keys until it's funded. You're not going to get keys till it's
Yeah.
funded. So
So
you've
try not to close on a Friday if you're expecting to move in that weekend.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Misty, that's a big rule for Misty. Don't close on Fridays. So, because
Because sometimes you don't get funded till the next day, and sometimes even 2 days later, depending if you had maybe a late closing Thursday night or something.
mhm,
So, and title companies generally close at 5 o'clock, and they're not there on the weekends. So or holidays. So make sure you pay attention to that calendar.
yeah. Yeah. So little stuff like that. Again, it's an easy process. It's not hard going through it. It's just kind of nerve wracking if you've never been through it. But once you've been through it once, it's not painful. And making sure that you just know you have your option period. Especially when you first start, give yourself a good option period. 7 days is solid, and just know that you're whoever you work with. If you're working with an agent or if you're doing it yourself, just give yourself enough time to get things done, and don't try to close super fast. 30-day window is normal, 45-day window if you want. But really, I mean, you have 3 days to get your money to title company. You have your 7-day option period. You're paying for that period,
Or
and then
whatever amount.
yeah, whatever amount. I'm just throwing a number out. So you're paying for that period to be able to back out, and then after that, once you've pretty much agreed after option period, it's just waiting around for a little bit. There's not really anything else to do.
Now, the
Um,
title company should give you a settlement statement,
right.
3 days prior to closing, at least 3 days prior to closing. And that is just kind of a checklist of all of the fees and stuff that you're responsible for paying. And, the seller gets theirs as well. And that way you can look it over and see if everything's adding up correctly. Are they paying for this or that? Make sure everything's good, and it tells you how much you should be bringing to closing.
Mhm.
That way you can go to the bank, get a cashier's check, or set up a wire or whatever you need to do prior to closing. And that way you're not running around like a chicken with his head cut off on the day of closing trying to figure everything out.
Yeah.
So they're supposed to get that to you 3 days before closing
And
at the latest.
that's where they show, like, if you have any credits,
Hmm.
things like just kind of thinking out loud here, like taxes,
Yeah, property
make sure
taxes.
taxes are paid up because, if you buy it in half the year, so little questions like that. So if you buy it, in June, on month 6, the seller is responsible for all the past taxes. You're responsible for all the taxes going forward. And
Hmm.
so they kind of make those adjustments, so little stuff like that just shows you what you're coming to the table with. So I can't speak for everyone 100%, but I know in our experience, a lot of times you come to the table with a little bit less than you think you would. So, but always plan to come to the table with more. So don't be like, oh, I got it down. Like, plan for more. Be
Hmm.
surprised when you go less. That's
Yeah.
usually us. We plan for more, and we're like, oh, cool. We don't really have to bring as much as we thought we were going to have to bring. So it's kind of like that Homer Simpson, ooh, piece of candy. Like, ooh, money. So it kind of gives you that, that way you're not setting these expectations, and then you're like, oh fuck, I got to bring more money. I wasn't planning for that. So plan to bring more to closing, and then get a good surprise when you actually only have to bring less. So a good title company, guys. Another thing too that I would like to make you guys aware of as well, when you're buying, unless the seller says I want to go here, you actually can pick a title company. It is completely up to you. Unless the seller is like, I have to close at this one, you can actually pick where you want to go. Now, the question is, who the hell do I pick? Because there's just so many of them. Typically, an agent, if you're working with an agent, they have someone they prefer. A lot of it has to do with they have done transactions with those title companies before because they felt like it was smooth. So they're trying to help with a smooth process. And so that's why they otherwise pick certain companies and say, well, I'm going to work with this company over that company. So just know that you're not stuck to one title company and that's it. You've got to pick a title company. But I would say if an agent, if you're working with an agent, then let them take their advice
Yeah,
and
usually the listing agent and the seller will have already picked a title company,
right.
and they have it in the notes, um, and say not to change it unless you are actually going to be paying for the title policy,
Hmm.
because they've already established it somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And then but when you get experience, then you'll probably have preferred title companies. But in
Yep.
the beginning, and a good title company should be able to walk you through those documents that you're signing when you
Yep.
sit down. They'll have tons of snacks and treats for you as well. They'll be like, would you like some water, some coffee? They might even bring out, some Starbucks. I don't know. They roll out the red carpet. They want to make sure.
Little photo ops.
Yeah, photo ops. They're excited. You're excited and stuff. So, but that's really just kind of the process, start to finish. Do we miss anything on that process at all that you
I don't think
can
so.
think of? We really try to simplify that because if you're buying, I know it's scary, but it's not that scary once you get it done. And once you go through it once, and you get you'll have your hand held. We had ours held. You know,
Yeah.
uh,
And the first time
just
it's probably going to be a whirlwind.
yeah.
You don't really know what happened to you.
It's like when we got married.
Yeah.
We got done the wedding night. We're like, what the hell just happened? Honey, I don't. I remember we were like,
Did we eat?
yeah. All I remember is I forgot something. I forgot the ring. I showed up to Joe T. Garcia's after I'd said yes, and then I like woke up in a hotel room. I don't even drink, and by the way, I don't even drink. It was just that I don't drink. I've never drank in my life, but it was just that big of a whirlwind. Of like, what the hell just happened? So yeah, it is, man. It can be a whirlwind, but I think if you just kind of follow those steps and know what you're getting into, man, it can be one of the most rewarding things you do as far as being able to purchase an investment property.
And
So
there's a lot of instances where it seems like it might be taking a long time, like searching for the home maybe. It might take a long time to find the one that you want.
mhm,
So that process might be slow. And then you find the property that you want and you're going under contract, and that process is like really fast because you have all these deadlines and got to do this, got to do that.
yeah,
And then get the inspection, move forward. Okay, all right. And then you go back into another slow moving process of title, appraisal,
mhm,
survey, all that stuff, and just waiting for closing. And so it's kind of like a roller coaster of, oh, we're moving fast. Oh, it's a slow process. Oh,
yeah,
so
yeah. But remember these words, and this Robin says this a lot. I enjoy this. You can't steal in slow motion, and I 100% agree with that. When you're on the buying side, you need to be prepared to move quickly when you are making those offers. So you've got to make quick decisions on whether or not you want to move forward. Because if you don't make quick decisions, I promise you, there's someone else out there like Misty and I who are going to be like, "We'll take it," and
yeah,
no questions asked.
don't hem and haw.
Yeah, no hemming and hawing. No hemming and hawing. Yeah, yeah, because otherwise you'll have someone who's experienced that's going to come in and say, "I'll take it. I don't need an option period. Just throw me down for it. X amount of dollars, and we're good." And they'll move to the next thing. So you've got to make quick decisions, and especially on good deals. They're going to move quick. I mean, we see that all the time. We're like, "Yeah, Misty, that looks pretty good. Do we want to do it? Do we not? And then or we're working with somebody and like, hey, do you guys want to do this? Because this isn't to get pressure you to do it. This is just saying I got money that this thing's gonna move quick, and when it does, once it goes under contract, unless it falls out, nothing we can do.
And especially as a novice or, not not doing it as many times as investors and stuff have, then yeah, you're gonna get cold feet. It's just natural.
Yeah,
You're gonna have them doubts and stuff. So don't take that wholeheartedly. Like, oh, we're making a mistake. Yeah, and and so
yeah.
those times are gonna pop up, especially when you have to pull money out of your account. That's when it hits.
So, and
But
just to touch on that, I think a way to combat that if you're new to it is, yes, you're pulling money out of your account, but you're putting it into a house. You're just taking it and you're putting it into a house. So you're putting it into, a duplex or a fourplex or a
Mhm.
triplex. You're putting it somewhere else. You're just parking it somewhere.
Into something that appreciates.
It's going to grow, and so you're not going to lose anything. It's going to grow. So you can't see it, you can't touch it anymore. You can't open up your bank app and be like, "Oh, I've got this money in my account." But you definitely it's being put to work somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing too is it's that old Warren Buffett, the best time to sell is never. This is what it is. Like that's kind of, the best time to sell is never. And so, if you are buying and you are concerned that maybe, well, I bought a little bit over too much. Think back in 2020 when people bought way over
Mhm.
too much. Those people are fine now. I mean, they had low interest rates.
Yeah.
Everything's turned out, everything shook out for them. Uh, they're not in a bad situation. Now, some maybe there might be some idiots out there, but for the most part, if they paid 20,000 over, they're fine. They had a 2% interest rate, 3% interest rate. It shook out fine.
Yeah.
Their house is worth what they paid for it when they overpaid. So time will take care of that
Yep.
situation. It's,
Yep.
so you're not actually going to be out of it. So yes, I agree with Misty. You will get cold feet sometimes, or am I making the right decision?
You'll
But
be pulling them down to the title company.
that's right. This is
Get
going
your
to
butt
grab
in there.
her leash. She's going to grab. She's going to treat me like my dog, our dog Finn. So yeah. So it's okay when you do get cold feet or you do end up in a situation. One, I hope you don't. But if you do end up in that situation and you end up like me, the way I was, where I was like all nervous and stuff, you think long term. That's why I don't get nervous anymore, because I just think way in the future. Like, what is this going to look like in 5 to 10 years, 20 years? What's it going to look like when it's paid off, right? All of those things. You need to think about that. And when you think that far ahead, it's so much easier. The Your feet get warm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but anyhow,
And then also if you're buying an investment property and it's not vacant,
mm,
um, just a lot of them won't allow you to view the inside of it unless you're under contract.
right. Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. So if you're buying a single family or a duplex or a fourplex, whatever, if there's not a vacant unit, sometimes you have to pay to play. So you have to put in, pay that. They have to accept the contract, and you have to pay that option fee in order to even view the inside. So just keep that in mind. That's not uncommon.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't look at it like you're losing $100.
Yeah.
Oh, I lost a hundred
Yeah.
bucks. Look at it like I get a chance to make sure, like, if in that situation, if the numbers work out, right, you just run your preliminary numbers. Whoever you're working with, you're working with an agent, they should be able to run preliminary numbers with you and say, yeah, this is about what you would pay between your insurance, your
hmm
taxes, and
And they should be able to tell you what the
your
current
payment.
leases are,
Right.
what amounts those are, and just run your numbers. And if it makes sense, it's intriguing, then
Mhm.
yeah, pay to play.
Yep. Yeah, you can, guys, just a little tip. You can run your numbers. And when I say we hear the words run your numbers, it's run what your payment is. You can actually find that out really easy. It's not hard. You could literally Google mortgage calculator, and Google has its own little mortgage calculator to pull up. You can put in your loan amount, you can put in the down payment amount, uh, your
Interest.
your interest rate, what it possibly would be,
You can look up the taxes on the county website.
and then you can guesstimate. Or if you really want to get good at it, you can just call your insurance company and say, I need to get a quote, and then they can give you a quote. So, and then that you add your principal interest payment, which is,
From the mortgage
from the mortgage
calculator.
calculator, and then you add the taxes, and then you add the insurance payment, add that together, and that's it. So if your principal and interest payment was $1,000, your taxes was 500, and your insurance was 200. So you got 1,000 plus 500, that's 1,500, and then now you got 700. So 700,
17.
1,700, yeah, 1,700. Come on now, I got my math going.
And if it's a HOA, keep that in mind too, because you'll have fees from that.
Yeah, exactly. So you got $1,700 in your, as your payment, and as long as, and if you're renting it out, guys, you should be working with a property management company that will tell you, okay, you can probably rent it out for, 2,000 or this amount. They'll give you what the rent is. So you've got to make sure. And again, that all is structuring deals and offers and stuff, but just kind of talking a little bit about making your offer. You can run those preliminary numbers ahead of time. So that way you just know what you're looking at. So, but yeah, that is buying 101, just as far as the process, understanding what you're going through. Don't be scared, get cold feet, think long term, warm yourself up, and we'll catch you guys next time.